I'm joined now by a member of that committee, Florida Senator Marco Rubio, a Republican senator. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
So President Trump made this very serious allegation. You're on the Senate Intelligence Committee. Do you have any evidence at all to suggest that President Trump is stating something factual here?
By that, you mean the tweet yesterday about the President Obama?
Yes.
Yeah. So obviously, I'm not sure what it is he is talking about. Perhaps the president has information that is not yet available to us or to the public. And if it's true, obviously, we're going to find out very quickly. And if it isn't, then obviously he'll have to explain what he meant by it. So I'm not sure what the genesis of that statement was, but well, I imagine we're going to learn more about it here over the next few days, one way or the other.
Do you think the FBI should clear it up one way or another?
Well, that's also a difficult thing. I mean, the FBI does not confirm either that there is or that there is not investigations. It does not talk about pending matters, either denying that they exist or admitting them. For the most part, that's been their practice. And I know it's a source of deep frustration for a lot of people, not just on this issue, but in other issues in the past. But what I think we should do is everybody needs to take a deep breath and calm down here. And let's go through this of what we are doing. In the Senate Intelligence Committee, we are working in a bipartisan way to collect facts that involves reviewing classified and sometimes unclassified and open source information. We will issue a report to the Senate that will be available to the American people, and then people can form judgments on the basis of the collection of facts. That is what we are undertaking. I remain confident that the Senate Intelligence Committee is going to produce a document built on the facts that will allow people to reach judgments based on the facts. And that's what we should be doing in something like this.
The White House counsel right now is trying to figure out what they can release from the top secret FISA court in their effort to provide some sort of evidence to the president's tweets. Does it concern you at all, the White House counsel's office theoretically reaching out to the FISA courts to find out what they can release because of these tweets?
Well, I'm not familiar with the conversation that you're saying is taking place between the White House and FISA courts. I will say to you that this entire issue is reached a point now where so much of it's being litigated in the press. I can tell you that there are things being reported that are not true. I can tell you there are things out there that have been reported that are true. And in between all of that is where we are working in the Senate Intelligence Committee to gather facts. We're not a court. In essence, the Senate Intelligence Committee is not a law enforcement entity. We are reviewing everything that has happened, and primarily with a focus on the active measures that were undertaken by Russians or others in our campaigns in 2016. We're going to compile that into a report that will be released to our colleagues and to the American people. And I would just hope people would reserve judgment on these things until all of that is available. I know it's frustrating. We all want it to be available tomorrow, but this needs to be done in the right way, and that's what we're going to continue to work on. And I feel confident that it's going to be a document and a report that will be bipartisan and accurate.
We learned this week that Attorney General Sessions was in contact with the Russian ambassador on at least two separate occasions during the campaign. This is the second time that somebody close to President Trump has spoken with the Russian ambassador and then not been forthcoming about it. The other person, obviously, was General Michael Flynn, the national security advisor, who had to resign as a result. Why do you think senior officials in the Trump administration keep failing to be forthcoming about their communications with the Russians?
Well, I don't know about the others that you mentioned because I just don't know about who they met with or who they've talked to. I can tell you about Senator Sessions and I can tell you about ambassadors. That's what ambassadors do. I mean, I meet with dozens of ambassadors a year and I run into them all the time. That's what they do. I mean, they are out there trying to reach people and talk to them. And so it is not unusual for a member of the Senate to meet with an ambassador. Now, obviously, he, in the Senate committee, said he had not been in contact with anyone. That turned out to be inaccurate. And that, I think, was what became problematic in terms of the way he answered that question in committee. I don't believe it was intentional in any way because at the end of the day, it was not the kind of thing that Jeff Sessions does, and it's not the kind of thing that would be easy to hide, and nor would there be any reason to. So, but again, I think we've gotten to the point of hysteria here. Ambassadors try to meet with people all the time. I mean, I literally meet with dozens of ambassadors, and so do most senators, especially those on committees that touch upon foreign affairs and foreign relations.
But as you point out, the issue is the not being forthcoming about it, not the actual meeting. Have you ever met with the Russian ambassador, Sergei Kislyak?
Well, I haven't, that I remember now, but again, I'm probably not the kind of person that they would reach out to, but I've met with other ambassadors from other countries, including countries that from time to time we may have strong issues with. It happens. I mean, that's what they're here to do, and that's what they try to do. And in fact, often when a new ambassador is appointed or a new senator is elected or you get appointed to a committee, they try to reach out proactively and meet with you. We haven't had a lot of connections with the Russians, but I imagine some of that is they probably think I'm a lost cause in terms of talking to on some of these issues. But we meet with dozens of ambassadors every year.
U.S. intelligence officials, of course, say that Kislyak is not just an ambassador, he's also a spy and a recruiter of spies. You're on the Senate Intelligence Committee. Is that your understanding?
Well, I'm not going to get into what the Intelligence Committee assesses on anything. Suffice it to say that it is not a mystery to anyone that, and I'm not talking about him in particular, just in general, that virtually every embassy in Washington, D.C. has some intelligence component associated with it. And that's just the nature of diplomatic facilities, not just in Washington, but all over the world. But in the end, again, I go to reiterate the point I've made earlier, and it's this. Ambassadors try to meet with senators and congressmen and people on the Hill all the time. It is what they spend a significant amount of their time doing. That is their job. It is not unusual that an ambassador would meet with a senator on both sides of the aisle, as has been the case here, by the way.
Let's talk about immigration. Before his Tuesday speech to a joint session of Congress, President Trump met with news anchors at the White House. I was there. He said he would support, theoretically, a compromise immigration bill. And a senior administration official went on to say that President Trump would even support legal status for undocumented immigrants who have not committed other serious crimes while being in the United States. President Trump, he didn't bring this up during his address to Congress. His staff told CNN the next day that the whole thing about a compromise immigration bill was a, quote, misdirection play. As someone who worked hard on this issue, what do you make about all of this?
Well, I don't think it's a misdirection play. I think the president realizes that we have an immigration problem in America and that we need to fix it. But I also think the president realizes, and it's been my advice to him and anyone who will listen, that the best way to do this is in a series of measures and that we should take our time and do this thing right.
But, Senator, the White House told CNN that it was a misdirection play. The White House basically said, hey, when President Trump said that to you guys, he was just throwing a lot of smoke there so that you guys would give him some good press for a few hours, and then he gave red meat to his base in the actual speech. That's from the White House.
Well, again, I don't know what the White House may have told you or not told you. I can tell you that my sense is that there is a desire and an interest to fix this, but it's going to be done the right way and in the right sequence and in the right order.
During the campaign, then candidate Trump was asked if he would split up families as part of his deportation policy. He said, quote, we have to keep the families together, unquote. But CNN confirmed on Friday that the Department of Homeland Security is considering a proposal that would separate children from adults when they're trying to enter the country illegally at the southern border. The Trump administration says that these children are being used as pawns. Is this new proposal from DHS, if it actually comes to fruition, would you support it?
Well, first of all, I don't know if this is a new proposal or if this is some document internally that someone dreamt up and as a suggestion, but no one's ever going to actually do it. We heard reports a couple weeks ago that they were going to use the National Guard to round people up, and of course that turned out not to be true. Suffice it to say that there is no doubt that in many parts of Central America and in the Western Hemisphere, there are people sending their children or even oftentimes arriving with children because they know that if they do, they'll be treated differently than people that arrive without children. I am deeply concerned about that, and one of the best things we can do is to help countries, for example, like Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, to improve conditions so people don't have to leave those countries. And that's why I support the Alliance for Prosperity. But I don't even know if this is a real proposal. I'd have to learn more about it to understand exactly what they're talking about doing. And in general, just the way you mentioned it to me now, I think it could be problematic to implement, and that would be my advice to them. But I'm just not going to comment on something I don't know if it's a real proposal or just some idea someone was floating around, but no one has taken seriously. We just don't know, and until we do, it would be premature to opine on it.
Let's turn to healthcare. A big split's emerging within the Republican Party on the question of whether Obamacare should be repealed in its entirety or just partially and then fixed, the rest of it that remains. House Republicans are considering a plan that would repeal portions of Obamacare but leave other elements intact. Two of your former presidential rivals and colleagues in the Senate, Ted Cruz and Rand Paul, they're insisting on a full repeal. Are you with them on this issue?
Well, I want to repeal Obamacare, but I also don't want to go back to the system we had in 2009. That didn't work either. And understand that when people talk about partial repeal, it's because the process that's being used for repeal is reconciliation. There are things you can do through reconciliation, and there are things you cannot. And we just don't have 60 votes in the Senate to do things outside of that reconciliation product. I think that this needs to happen. Obamacare does need to be repealed. We have to put something in place that is better than Obamacare, because what I do not support is going back to 2009, because that system had problems as well.
Senator Marco Rubio, Republican of Florida, it's always a pleasure to have you on, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.